The Gargoyle's Quest series has been on my recommended list for over a decade now, and recently I finally got around to playing them, and I was really surprised by what I found. Originally, I had only intended to play the third game in the series, Demon's Crest, but I decided to play all three, and I'm really glad that I did. The first game in the series, Gargoyle's Quest for the original Game Boy, is actually the third game in Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins series, known as Makai Mura, or Demon World Village in Japan, and was released in 1991. Arthur and his girlfriend are nowhere to be seen, and instead you take on the role of the Red Devil, or Red Arima, from the main series, and here he's finally given a name that would endure for the next 2 decades: Firebrand. I actually skipped over this game more than once because the box art is awful. Just look at this. Not to mention the advertising implies that he's going to pop out of my Game Boy and haunt me. No thanks. If Firebrand had looked like this on the cover instead, maybe I'd have played it. Oh, and if it makes any difference to you, the game was produced by Tokuro Fujiwara, who directed Bionic Commando and Sweet Home, on top of producing Mega Man 2, DuckTales, Breath of Fire, and more. People often recommend the series, and most of the time when they do, they'll skip over the first 2 games and simply recommend Demon's Crest. I think that's a mistake. Gargoyle's Quest provides some of the best platforming on the original Game Boy, in my opinion, almost rivaling games like Super Mario Land 2 or Wario Land. It's also a really unique game in that it blends the classic 2D platforming with top-down RPG-style exploration. While at times this seems like a slightly awkward combination, it's not been done very much, and it's also interesting to learn about the Ghoul realm and about the legendary Red Blaze, who's supposed to save it from the King of Destruction's forces. You see, the ghouls and the ghosts from Ghouls and Ghosts are at war in this game, although the ghosts are called Destroyers, and it's your job to defeat the ghosts and save the Ghoul realm. You'll get to explore a few villages populated by fellow ghouls, as well as an overworld map that's filled with cool demonic imagery, such as lakes of fire and walls made of skulls. There's even random battles in which you'll enter a small platforming level and have to defeat a random set of enemies in order to proceed. Although, admittedly, once you've gotten a few upgrades, these become a mild annoyance at best. Yeah, upgrades. While you don't exactly level up, you do collect a range of new weapons, armor, and wing upgrades to help you fly further or hover for longer. Once you enter a stage, the platforming kicks in. It's a slower, more methodical style than in games like Super Mario Land or like Wario Land. You have a few abilities. Firstly, the ability to fly for a short amount of time by pressing the jump button while already in the air, and the ability to cling to walls. Together, these abilities make for some really cool platforming puzzles that don't feel like most generic platform games. Falling off of a ledge isn't as scary here as it is in other games, so a lot of the platforming involves figuring out how to reach a new ledge, or navigate a room where the walls and ceilings are covered in spikes that you can't cling to. Wario Land is probably my favourite Game Boy platformer, purely because it's filled with these kinds of clever platforming puzzles, and Gargoyle's Quest scratches that same itch. It starts out pretty difficult, bordering at times on unfair, but once you've gotten the first jump upgrade and some more health, it starts to even out. You'll spend most of your time helping demon lords regain power that's been stolen from them by the invaders. One such lord, Jark, who to begin with I thought was called Jerk, wants you to find his gremlin stick. Yeah, I don't know what that is either. But you go and find it, and then he gives you a fingernail, which I think is supposed to be a claw, seeing as it upgrades your attack. Yeah, the story side of this game isn't exactly Final Fantasy. Interestingly, the layout of the map means that you'll get to play through a couple of the levels in reverse, which is kinda cool. It also has a password system which lets you continue from each village, and is awesome because you will get game over a lot. Along the way, you'll find a few more upgrades, including a weapon that lets you break through blocks to find hidden areas, and a sticky projectile that will temporarily let you cling onto spikes, both of which are necessary to progress. Eventually you'll be powered up enough to prove yourself as the legendary Red Blaze and defeat the King of Destruction, Brager. I didn't expect the game to have bosses, but it does, and some of them are pretty cool and make good use of the game's unique platforming mechanics. There are 6 in total, and the last 2, Rushefell and Brager, will provide some significant challenge. The only thing I'd really knock the game for is its varying music quality. There's a couple of decent tracks, which is to be expected from early 90s Capcom, but some of the music that you'll hear more often is repetitive and annoying. But don't let the box art put you off playing this game. Not only is it one of the better Game Boy games out there, but there's really very little else like it on any. The sequel, Gargoyle's Quest II: The Demon Darkness, was released for the NES in 1992 and was also ported to the Game Boy in 1993, but only in Japan. It's nice to see Firebrand finally take on his famous red color, and note that this is the only game in the series where he is actually red. Weird, right? This time you seem to be in control of a different Firebrand a few hundred years into the future, and the King of Destruction, this time with the help of another powerful demon called Gozer. Yeah, Gozer. Sounds familiar, maybe? Anyway, he's back, and this time the game follows much the same structure as the first, with a couple of small differences. There are no random battles on the overworld this time, which personally I found kinda disappointing. It made the overworld feel a little bit pointless, to be honest. There's really very little to see or do here, apart from a few crucial items that are hidden, with very few clues as to their location, such as these wings you're supposed to just know how to find in a tree. I had to use a guide to find this. There's no way I could have found this on my own. There's also a new ability called the Whirlwind, which lets you stand on air briefly, and is integral to some of the endgame levels. This game feels very close to the Game Boy version, but it doesn't quite play as nicely, and the level design doesn't feel as interesting. The platforming felt a bit more straightforward, but it also felt more sluggish than the previous game, and it doesn't provide much challenge except for some bizarre difficulty spikes in certain levels that just seem to be the result of poor design more than anything else. Some of the bosses are also brutally unfair, such as this asshole, who swoops into you all the time. You can trick him into which direction to go, but the timing is extremely precise, and even once I'd figured it out, I couldn't do it on command. You'll see many of the same items, including this dude's gremlin stick and the legendary fingernail, as well as the magic candles, which you'll use to defeat Brager again and save the Ghoul Realm for a second time. The music in this one isn't too great either, and ultimately it offers nothing that the Game Boy original doesn't, except that it's in color. If you're going to play these games, but you don't feel like playing all 3, this is definitely the one to skip. Demon's Crest gives us a lot more to talk about, so much so I considered doing it as a separate video. Being that it was released for the Super Nintendo in 1994, it has a decidedly darker tone like a lot of other Capcom games of the mid to late 90s. It has hugely atmospheric music and graphics, and really emphasizes the spooky Ghoul Realm location. It looks and sounds awesome. The gameplay has been completely overhauled too. You can hover forever right from the beginning, which plays a huge part in making the combat and platforming a lot more tactical. You can also collect gold and use it to buy potions and magic, which you'll need. I found the full health ginseng potion to be about the only thing that makes this game fair, because it's insanely difficult. There's also a gambling game you can play, in which you headbutt stone statues that come out of the wall. Yeah, you can headbutt. Firebrand is a right hooligan in this game. You can headbutt windows and even destroy a defeated boss you just turned to stone. Hardcore. The last major difference is there's no more overworld. Instead, you have a map to fly around using glorious Mode 7 graphics, and you select a location to visit by swooping down on top of it. It's a really nice way to maintain the atmosphere, even if it is a little bit clunky. There's not much in the way of story here either. Supposedly there are 5 crests: Earth, Air, Fire, Water, and Heaven, which when combined would give the person who controls them infinite power. Upon finding the 5th crest, a demon called Phalanx ambushes Firebrand and steals everything except the Fire Crest, which is shattered into pieces that you must collect in order to restore Firebrand's abilities, which return from the previous game, such as the Block Breaker and the Whirlwind. But much of this stuff isn't explained in the game, you're just kind of left to guess. Demon's Crest has some incredibly devious platforming segments and some really cool looking bosses. I really enjoyed the platforming levels, and the extra non-linearity they added by hiding items and secret entrances to other levels in the 4 main ones really gives you a lot more to explore. Additionally, with each crest that you find, you'll unlock a new form to change into. Fire, earth, air, and water forms. Each of these give you a different power that allow you to find hidden items and areas. However, some parts of the game are extremely difficult and felt really unfair, particularly some of the bosses. This part doesn't count though, as I hadn't realised that the water gargoyle's power is the ability to swim in a straight line. Eventually, you'll recover all the crests and march off to defeat Phalanx, at which point Firebrand hides them all in hopes that one day somebody worthy of challenging him might find them. And, sadly, that marks the end of Firebrand's platforming adventures. To my knowledge, he wouldn't be a playable character again until 2003, when he appeared in SNK's crossover game, SNK vs. Capcom, SVC Chaos, and then again in late 2011 for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Although, it is rumoured he will also be in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite later this year. Overall, this is a really good series that offers some highly unique platforming challenges, and is absolutely worth your time, especially as both Gargoyle's Quest and Demon's Crest are available on 3DS and Wii U Virtual Console for a lot cheaper than you'll find the originals.